Hello everyone, my name is Sonny Herman. I'm with cmh3studio, and today we're going to go and continue on a app that I was working on. It's a database app, but I've added some recent and new features that I'm going to go over. Uh, this is the Knox emulator, Android emulator, and today we're going to show how we can go into our database and select a record. So here's our list of database records. We have 8 of them. And what's new on this version is I'm able to select a specific record and bring it back. So if I select the first record, it'll bring me the first record. If I select the third record, it's going to give me that one. We also, in this tutorial, will show you how to get the value, the number of records, the length, the records in the database. We're also going to go and show you some functions related to the calendar. So this is where you pick the calendar date from the app, like so. And we're also going to show you the text hint field. So this is where you click into a field and you can see a hint of what's going on. Alright, so let's get started with our PowerPoint. So we are going to work with database records. We want to show how we can access them using the first and last item and the random feature. To get the length or to get the number of items in the database, we use the length. And for getting the selected item from a list, we're going to use the element with the ID and do the selected function. Again, I'm going to show you how to use the calendar feature in Codoozer. I'm going to also show you how we do the hint and HintColor in our app. So we are just going to use the same app as we did in the last tutorial, and we're just going to continue on with it further. As always, I'd like to show you the different components of Codoozer and how they work together. This is something that I always go over, but I think it's important. Every part of your Codoozer app will have these 4 main elements, and these are the additional functions and features you can use, but the resource is where you put all your files that you're working with. So in this case, we put a database file in here, but you could also put a PDF file, you could put an audio file, video file, images, you name it. The components are what access these resources. They are image components, text components, and you'll see those in the Codoozer app as type text or type image or type PDF viewer or type web. All those are the available in the drop-down list that you have in Codoozer. And then of course you have the views, which the views hold the components which contain the resources, and then the wrappers are how we control our views. In this tutorial, you'll see that I use a dialog box, I use menu, I use if logic to ask the Codoozer app if the last record has been reached or the first record has been reached. And then we also use events, and we reference those events with parameters and conditions. Alright, so accessing a record. Well, the first thing to know is after you've loaded or drag and dropped your JSON database, which you can do that by just going into your Windows Explorer, and you can go to your documents and find your JSON database and simply drag it into the Codoozer app. That's all you have to do. So on Codoozer, at the very beginning of the app, this is how every app starts. You have a app JSON, you'll have a main view, you'll have, I think, a default dialog. But again, just to go over, if you've never been into Codoozer, the first thing you do is you define your name and the project name. In your Android section, this is where you give your package name, your version, and your version name. You can also define the colors. It comes when you first start it with 26 colors, but I usually curtail my colors to what I'd like to use for the app specifically, almost like a branding in a way. And then since we are using databases, you have to set this database to your file that you dragged and drop onto the screen. This is a JSON database, but it could be a comma separated file, a CSV file, and the ID that you give your database is important. So back to what we did when we first started accessing records, is I wanted to show you how I set properties based on the values of the first record or the last record. So let's go to main view. So in the events, I do a preload and I say set the property at property.number to the last record in the database. And the reason why I'm doing that is that when the app starts for the first time, that the first record, or the record they see when they click on this button right here, is actually the last record or the most recent. And ideally, that as we add more and more haikus to this database, that you'll want to see the most recent one first. And so when I set the property.number to last with that word right there, I'm saying get the last item, last index in there. I also set two additional properties. I call this one property last number. It does the same thing. It gets me the last number in the database. And I do this property called first number, and that's with the first in the database. It would be the first record in the database, or record 0 right here. This would be the first one. This will be the last one. And the reason why I'm doing that on the onload is because when the user goes to the database or the app, so let's go into the app as we're coming into it. It's got the last record in its memory right now, and I've got these navigational items that I want to go to the previous record or go to the next record, but I don't want the user to accidentally go too far, right? So I've set, and I'll show you this on the database view, how I set an if condition to say if you're at the last record, don't go any further. And then obviously if I go down, I can increment my way down to the first record, but then it won't go past the first record or go previous to the first record. And I'll show you a little bit more about that a little bit later. But I do this initially because I'm just trying to prevent some navigational errors. And so I define my first record and I define my last record in the database by using the word first and using the word last in my value. Hopefully you can see that there. So I do that at preload, and I'm setting the properties that'll help me later with the navigation. There is the word random that you could put here, like at database HaikuDB random index, and that will give you a random result from your database. So if you wanted the user to come in and have the first time they click on the database accessing, it could be a random. It could pick whatever you want it to. Well, it'll do it on its own. All right. So let's go back. The second part is length. I'm going to show you how I get the length I got a little bit more about accessing record. I've got some notes here that says, okay, yeah, I went ahead and described what these arrows do. So let's dig into that. On the database view, it brings up this haiku record here. That's this guy right here. And what I'm doing is when those buttons are pushed, I'm saying, okay, when that button is pushed, I want you to reduce, function reduce, that property number by 1. And only do this if that property number is more than the first number in the list. So let's pretend we're on record number 3. If I hit this button here, it's going to look at this function and say reduce 3 by 1, which means go to 2. But if the current property number is less than, in this case, 0, or in this if condition, if it's less than 0, don't allow anything to change. But keep doing it until you get down to the first number in the database, into the index here. And then on the other side, increase is what would happen. So let's go to database, let's go down to the navigation down here, and you can see what I'm talking about. So this is the previous button right there. It's an image, it's that picture of an arrow. On click, it reduces the property number by 1 if that property number is more than the lowest number in the database. Go ahead and do it. Now I also got this little refresh right after that, so boom, boom, and then refresh, and that's how it cleanly goes from the one record down to the lowest record. But as you can see, it's not going any further than the lowest record in the database. So for this side, I'm going to increase the record. I'm going to go to the next record. Very similar. I got an image that points to the right, and when on clicked, it's going to increase the property number by 1, and it's only going to do that if the property number is less than the last number in the database. So as we go up the ladder, it'll keep going until I get to the last record, and of course nothing happens after that, which is what I want. I want to keep the user in the boundaries of my records in my database. I don't want them, I don't know what would happen if I didn't put these edits in here. I guess I could have tried that, but good, I don't want to say program because I'm not really programming, good logical thinking, critical thinking about how your app is going to be used and how those records are going to be accessed and viewed. You always want to kind of protect the user from making a mistake. So I use the function to reduce and increase. I move the record up or down by 1. I use the if condition right here to prevent the record from going too far. And so my database tip on that was just, set up your barriers. Don't let the users make a mistake. All right, now on to length, getting the length of the records. So in my listing view, I have a type list, and in that type list I gave it an ID. It's called my list, and what that is this screen right here. It's my list of IDs, and as you can see here, I've got the number of haikus at the top. And how I did that was by calling the source database.haikudb, which is my ID .length. Length is the keyword here to get your value for the haikus, or for your records in the database. For my situation, it's the haikus. And to see that on Codoozer, I can go to listing, come over here. And what I'm doing is, this is the visor that's in Codoozer. Different than the other visor, which is the emulator, but similar in a way. Maybe it's ironically spelled the same. But I'm just using my mouse to hover over the area I want to look at. And when I do that, this, as you can see, the screen is scrolling to the area that I'm focused on. So right here, I just say, give me a text type, and when you do, show the source as at database.haikudb.length. And you can see in the visor here, it doesn't give me a value, but when you run it on your emulator back over here, it gives you the correct count. Something else, another user asked me, how do I turn the visor on and off? And I didn't realize this, but my logo is hiding the screen. And so what I wanted to show that user is this is how you turn the visor on and off over here in the top right. So put my logo over there and was clicking buttons and nobody saw how I did that. That's alright though. That's why you practice. This is why you get in Codoozer and just try different things until you get it to work. Alright, I think that's pretty much it on linked. It's pretty straightforward. It's a nice way to kind of get a count of how many records in your database, and that's how you do it. That's how you go about it. Alright, so now we are on listing. This is the listing page, and this is how you're able to, when the user selects a specific record, that it takes that record and moves along to, in my case, I have it go to the database screen. So let me show you that. I'm going to click this 7th one right here, diffuse raindrops, and I click it. It takes me to the database screen, and then how does it know what that value is right there? So let me show you. You use on your screen that you're leaving, on the screen that you have your list on, type list with that database resource right there. On that type list, you say, when you're listing the fields, because we showed this in the last video, the fields are, for this database, the fields are index, date, haiku, and credit. And so on listing, what I do over here, and you don't see it in this visor emulator, but what it's doing is it's getting the list with the ID called MyList. Data source is the database.haiku, which is the ID for the haiku.json. And so to get the field, or get the date field, you say text and field called date. That's this value right there. And you can do it on another one right below it, and one for credit as well. But on this listing page, I just do the date and the haiku, because I don't want, I figured they'll get the credit part later when they click on it. Alright, so there's the length on the same page. Let me scroll down to my list. There's list. Show the date field as a text. Oops, edit undo. Show the haiku field as text, and when on click, set the property dot number to the value of, and here's the magic in it, at element dot mylist dot selected. So just make sure you use at element, the ID of your list, and then the word selected. there's the ID. It's for your list. I should make sure that it's this ID right here for type list. Somehow I wrote it twice, and that's my bad. I shouldn't have done that. So that's my list, the ID. Change the name so it doesn't get confusing. So this is the one right here that you need to reference. Sorry about that. And so when it's on clicked, it sets a property number to the item you just selected, and then it goes to the database screen, this one. And that property number, I use that over and over again, but really if you look at how it sources the record, it's at database.haiku, and this is the number I'm always manipulating. I'm setting it, to the last record in the database. I'm setting it to number 8, index number 8, and then later I use these arrows and I increase the number to, by 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and I do that over and over again, and that way this remains dynamic to whatever is being asked for. So I can come from the list screen, and I could say get me number 6 there, or I could use these arrows to go up and down. Every time I'm simply manipulating this number to go up and down on the records. And that is how you get from a list to a single record, by using this at element dot your list ID, your ID for your list, and then the word selected. Alright, on to the next thing, the calendar function. So in my app, I wanted to have a way for people to submit their own haikus. Now this isn't fully functioning yet. Alright, now all I got is the form fields, or the text fields that you enter, input fields that you type in your values, the words that you want to do, and all that kind of stuff. But this is also where I put the calendar function. So on the submit view, on the field right here, I say do the function called calendar, and this property dot date, and these fields you have to fill out. You have to say what is the info it's gonna, when it comes back, where is this info going to go into? What property is this going to come back to? Is it going to be a date time? I'll show you all the different ones. And then the format is key and very important that you pay attention to case sensitivity here, because it does make a difference. So the calendar tips are case sensitive, and you can go to this web address here to see examples of the values that you can use for format. So let's come back here and let's click on what will be the calendar function. And as you can see, it brings up a cool calendar here. You can pick whatever date, and then when you click OK, it populates that date. And when you click cancel, it doesn't do anything to it. So let me show you that in Codoozer. So there's my submit view. There's the calendar picker right there. And so here is the function, calendar. There's the value or property I'm going to put it into, the date. Here are the different ones: date, date time, now, that's pretty cool. That wasn't there an hour ago. That's another thing, guys. Codoozer is being updated so rapidly that there's new functions that are happening faster than I can create tutorials about. And that's kind of fun and challenging for me, but I really think this company is something else. And then, of course, the format, which is the month, day, and the year. That's how I wanted to format that. And here is that web link as well. And you can see for the month, you do a capital M. For the day, you do a lowercase d. And for the year, you do a lowercase y. Month, day, day, year, year. And that's how I wanted to show over there. So there's that. I can set it to the first. And that's how that works. Almost done. We're near the end here. Here's just another view of calendar function. Again, this is where you set calendar into the property with the date, date time, now, all that good stuff. And then here's just a snapshot of that web link I gave you right here. And that's where it ended up. Alright, we're on almost the end here. This is called a hint. And when I was putting the forms together, I didn't even know this was there until I clicked on it. And I found out that when you use input text, which are like forms, you can give the user a hint of what's in there. And so this is an input text field. This is my haiku field right here. So this is the date, this is the haiku field, this is the name of the person we're going to credit. And so what I did in the haiku field is I said, this is how a haiku is put together. It's 5 syllables followed by 7 followed by 5 for a total of, I guess, 17 syllables. But let's show you that on the app. Well, you can see it right there. When I'm not in the field, it gives you the hint right there. So now I can type whatever, you know. Obviously, it would be a haiku that someone can enter. Whatever, something like, I know that's not a haiku, that's not proper. I don't claim to be a person who writes poems, but I know someone who does, and I think they're cool. So this is the hint feature. And like that, you can enter your information, you can pick your date. I can fix that to today's date. And then the last part of this is the submit function. But before we go there, I wanted to show you that there was another part of the hint that I thought was kind of interesting. It's called HintColor. And so if you click on there, it's just like setting any other color in your app. It just gives you the color, I think, of the text. Let's say you wanted it, to be something else. I don't know, red. You could do that. Something that I didn't want to do on this particular app because it's actually green. I see it right there. Let's change it. Let's try something else. Let's try primary dark. Okay, now it's red. So that's pretty cool. That's HintColor, and it works on input text type fields. Alright, the last part of this app, which is actually not in the PowerPoint, but is fun anyway, is I did a dialog box when the user clicks this submit button. And it brings up this Japanese words for thank you for submitting your haiku. And so that dialog box is right here. It's called submit. So back on Codoozer. On the submit button, right down here, it says on click, I want you to do the pop-up, which is right here, and go to submit, and there's the link to submit right there. And here's the submit screen right here. I have thank you at the top. The positive is this value here. The negative is that value here. And eventually what I'm going to do is on the confirm, I'm going to write to the database. I'm going to add a record. I'm going to increase. I'm going to find the last record, increase it by 1, and then write that record to the database. I haven't done that yet, but that's my next steps here. I would prefer that. I think I can't do that until I get this as an online database where it's accessed through the web, because it wouldn't make any sense for each person to download this app and then write their own haikus for their own pleasure. That would be silly. It's for everyone, right? It's for everyone to share. So the confirm currently just goes to the home page, and the cancel, what I did on that one is just do the abort function, which is stop, don't do anything. And that worked better because when I was on the screen and I clicked cancel and it aborted, it kept everything here. And when I had it do the function back, it took me to the home screen, and that's not what I wanted to do. So the abort function was actually the better choice here on that cancel. And then of course if I hit confirm, which is the positive, on confirm, go to main view. So then it goes to your main view. Alright guys, well that's our tutorial for today. Hopefully you learned a little something. Please like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. If you're on Library, which I highly recommend you take a look at Library. The reason why is because to me it's better than YouTube. YouTube is totally driven by Google and all that, and if you want to find some interesting content, video content, art, music, you can go in here and you can click here and type cmh3studio, and then if you click on this link right here, cmh3studio library tips and tutorials, you can find all the different tutorials I've done and any videos I've reposted from other people. And one of the things I like is to switch this to dark, because it's much easier on my eyes to view these. But if you go in here, you can look at videos I've done in the past for Codoozer and MovenCube. And if you're interested in helping out, you click this support button. And what that does is, so when you're in Library, this is a decentralized video platform, and you earn LBC coin by viewing videos, by making your own content, by supporting other content creators. And the way you support them is by clicking this support button right here, and then you can make it's kind of like, paying for content you enjoy. And then of course you could search whatever, but you can add tags to content you like to look at. I like to follow people who do tutorials on blockchain and other things. But library.tv is the way to get off YouTube someday and start watching content that can't be revoked. And it's just an amazing new platform. And plus, I don't have anything against cryptocurrency, so I think it's kind of interesting how you can earn money by just watching videos. Alright, well that's our videos, or our tutorial for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and have a great evening.